Welcome to the Grow with the Flow podcast, the ultimate destination for all things D2C and e-commerce. I'm Dove Karp and my co-host is Dave Silverman. And today's episode is brought to you by Chargeflow, the leading chargeback automation solution for e-commerce merchants. Now, imagine a world where chargebacks are no longer a headache, where you can focus on growing your business while Chargeflow handles the rest. With cutting-edge AI technology, industry-leading win rates, and unparalleled accuracy, Chargeflow is revolutionizing the way merchants manage disputes and recover lost revenue. The best part, Chargeflow only charges for recovered revenue. No monthly fees, no long-term contracts, no hidden costs, just instant ROI. Stay tuned as we dive into the latest trends, success stories, and expert advice to help you scale your store and take your e-commerce business to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or looking to optimize your operations, Grow with the Flow and Chargeflow have you covered. Remember, when it comes to chargebacks, let Chargeflow do the heavy lifting so you can focus on what matters most, growing your e-commerce business. So give Chargeflow a try today. It's easy to get started and there is no risk or obligation. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome everybody to the Grow with the Flow podcast. Today, we're super excited to be hosting Brian Wallace in studio. So Brian is the founder and president of Now Sourcing, an industry-leading content marketing agency that makes the world's ideas simple, visual, and influential. Brian has been named a Google Small Business Advisor for 2016 until the present and joined the South by Southwest Advisory Board in 2019 until now and became an SMB advisor for Lexmark in 2023. He is the founder of the Innovate Summit, an innovation conference that successfully launched in May of 2024. Welcome to Grow with the Flow, Brian.
Thank you, Dove. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah,
in the flesh.
Exactly. Yeah. It's huge. Most of the time we are dealing with, internet conversations, but here we get to actually have it in person.
Now we will have a conversation with the internet.
Exactly.
Yes.
Through unified.
That's
you got
right.
it. So Brian, can you break down a little bit of your background, your professional background specifically about how you got into Now Sourcing, founding it, and ultimately all the wonderful things that you've been involved with?
Sure. So he starts actually in the tech field as opposed to the marketing field. I was a technologist for nearly a decade, but I enjoy the art of communication, which is probably why I'm here instead of just like coding furiously in the background, still sticking in tech land. Technology is great if it's an appliance and everything is working, but then sometimes CrowdStrike happens and then entire airports are grounded. You don't want to be the guy taking the heat for that one.
Yeah, that was rough.
So yeah, that was a moment. But everybody appreciated technology right there.
Yeah.
Tell you what. So after about a decade of that, and really seeing that I wanted to lean more into the marketing field, I left New York, went to the Midwest or Midwest South axis, and it became a very early on social media agency. It was very cool back in the day. I enjoyed the technology side, understanding how systems work and algorithms work, but I also like the art of conversation and what makes people think, what makes them act, what makes them tick, what makes them buy, what influences them. So social media, the early days of social media was perfect for the way that I think.
When you talk about early, like what platforms were prevalent at that time or platform?
Sure. So it was like after MySpace, but when Facebook and Twitter were starting to gain some steam.
Gotcha.
So we're talking for
Like
reference, like 2006, 2007, when the housing market was destroying the world and me and little old Kentucky is just rocket shipping this crazy place. We were like the first place to do social media for John Deere and some Jay-Z brands and all this wild stuff.
Wow.
It was the Wild West before big tech kind of changed the way everybody kind of needlessly fights with each other on the internet. I like good
Unfortunately.
debates. Yeah, it's okay. We can still all be friends and hang out at coffee shops. Hopefully.
I mean, hopefully. That's the goal.
Well, if you don't agree with 100 things that I believe, then you're wrong, right?
For you, yes.
Yeah. We could debate that, but let's get on with the show. So there used to be, in ye old internet days, there was a site called Dig, D-I-G-G.
Yes.
And it was almost like competing for attention with Reddit. So it was very early on with that. And individual users, not gigantic corporations, used to be able to curate news stories and front page them on this site. Imagine hitting the front page of Reddit and all that brought, except Reddit was not as big back then. So there were 100 people in the world that were responsible for about 50% of everything that hit that homepage. And I was one of those people. So I found that there was the combination of myself and our small team where we were really good at storytelling. We had a sense of what would hit and go viral on the pulse of the internet. We're like, oh, kids go like that, not like that. But that's a different story. No, you don't know that? That's your pulse like that and like that. But the internet has sheesh. That's a little old by now. Sheesh. There we go. Yeah. Sorry, guys. All right. Gen Z silliness aside. Storytelling, the visuals to do it, and the virality. And there were maybe like 2 other places in the world doing infographics at the time. So we kind of abandoned the version 1 of the company, which was more social media, and then got into much more on the visual storytelling side.
So that's really surprising, because I feel everybody else does the opposite. They started with one thing and then they're like, oh, you know what? I really need to go into like social media marketing. Like that's where it's at. And you went the opposite. You're like, no, let's niche down into more infographics.
Correct, because I'm not in the infographic business. I'm in the future of what the internet wants business, right? So if there was a better way to do it, I would do it. People would say, well, why are you still doing this? It's 2024. What's the matter with you? And I'd say the internet is much more low tech and garbage behind the scenes that's held together with bubblegum and scotch tape. Who are we kidding? You ever see some of these terrible systems in the back?
I wish I would even understand what that meant.
We could talk about it later.
You know, the Matrix. I'm not so fluent in the
You're
Matrix.
In it, baby. You're a copper top.
Different types of Matrix I'm interested in, but yeah.
Matrices.
Exactly. Matrices.
Yes.
See, this is the type of internet problems that, you know, you say it's matrices. I'm anyway.
I said matrices.
You said it correctly.
Yes.
But it's okay.
That's okay. Both are valid, I think.
Yeah. So ultimately I want to kind of, okay, so that went into the world of infographics.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But you seem to be doing significantly more than just infographics, because you're saying it's more about the story. It's what the internet wants.
Mm-hmm. So when people are like, well, there's AI now and there's Canva and templates, why would I even do what you do? It's because you don't understand. So the world over-explains stuff, and they talk about all of the, imagine your favorite restaurant. You're going out with your wife and family, you're having a celebration, right? And then instead of some sizzling steak coming to your table, some dude from the back reads all the ingredients on the bottle, and it's the least interesting thing in the world. And everybody in sales and marketing is just sitting there reading the ingredients, and they've missed the game. Because what they think that they have to do is outbrain everybody, but really they're going way over everybody's head instead of straight to them. So to recast and reimagine what you're doing and who you're doing it for, which is your customer, not somebody that has the level of understanding that they would be competing with you, right? Explaining something to be relatable to an audience that only has a beginner to intermediate level of understanding of your product and service is where it's at. And then through our thought experiment that's turned into reality, we go from a beginner level of a person's understanding to almost an intermediate level in one sitting. So what we're doing is we're imagining it as a story, but has emotion first, because that's how people make decisions. If you've ever read Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, people understand a lot more in the trap back door of the subconscious, the trap door, much more than you think. You think you make all these decisions, but your brain's already got it figured out, and you're just posturing. It's kind of horrifying, right? So we're seemingly an autopilot, but brains are primal and very sophisticated before your rational thought kicks in. So a lot of people will use fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Thank you, news. I don't like to do that as much. But I think that things that are empowering, things that are positive, things that are helpful, and things that can be instructive yet informative and entertaining make a lot more sense to offer to your audience.
Yeah. I want to go a little bit deeper into the idea of storytelling, right? If you were able to give a short mini course in the next 2 to 3 minutes about storytelling, what are the most important parts of it? I know beginning, middle, end, but you know, beyond that, what are you trying to accomplish? Because you've already told us that taking maybe a complex idea and distilling it to its simple but impactful, emotionally driven form, there must be some type of formula if you're able to kind of go viral and keep on doing this over and over. And so what does that look like?
The predictable formula is emotionally led, story driven, backed up by data. All those things are important. Let's unpack that. Emotion is how your brain is going to interact with whatever content is out there. People have these crap filters. People have 2.9 seconds, or they bounce, or people have the attention span of a goldfish, which might be more of an insult to goldfish than humanity. Yet people can go watch the new season of Cobra Kai for 8 hours.
Yeah.
How? Why? I thought we didn't have attentions. It's not that we don't have attentions. It's that your content needs to be so good that it hits the interrupt of the brain cycle and gets permission for more of their attention. And that's it. And you do that through emotion. Then you do that through story, because story, like you said correctly, has a beginning, middle, end. It has a protagonist, a hero, an antagonist. People know the predictable turns of a story. So much so that when stories don't follow the rules, we don't like them, right? And then you have to have things backed up by data, because people won't believe you and your claims. And you never want to be called to the mat by the internet, because it's not a pretty place.
Yeah.
Right? People will come at you hard if you're not citing chapter and verse of where you got it and how you got it. Because people even do things that are called lying through statistics. Anybody can put together a survey. Don't get me started. So really good, high quality data to back that up. That's the formula.
So can you break that down by maybe so a company came to you and they're like, hey, can you tell our story,
Sure,
but in a way that's impactful, that kind of really gets it going?
Well, since we're talking to a whole bunch of people that are in e-com DTC land, how about we do that?
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. So once upon a time, there was a company called Sellbrite, which is now a part of GoDaddy.
Okay.
Sellbrite is like...
Bring this a little closer. Sorry.
Sellbrite.
Yep.
Yeah, just kidding. Sellbrite is like power tools for Amazon sellers and other platforms as well, but Amazon's the popular one. Now, imagine that I went and I told the emotion and story and data behind what it means to be an Amazon seller. And then I stood on a street corner of New York City and I told everybody about Amazon seller story stuff. How many people out of 100 would care?
Not many.
5? They'd probably be working in ad tech or Amazon seller stuff. But what if the top of it, and it would be useful and instructive if we also had this up on screen, which maybe we can also do. What if we started the story more as a graduated funnel with a bigger idea on top of it? Because a story isn't always linear. A story can come to a more narrow point. So instead of starting in the middle of the story, which is frustrating to the human mind and won't bypass, what if we said, here's how Amazon makes its money? Probably close to 100 out of 100 people would stop because they'd be like, yeah, I've got 20 packages sitting on my doorstep right now. I know they got my money. Yeah. How did they get it? And these guys, they get like billions of dollars every year on unused gift cards that people just throw away. So you weave in all these different story narratives and arcs and data points that you graduate the funnel, that you go from how Amazon makes money into how you as an Amazon seller could make money, and then how you as a customer of Sellbrite could make money in the Amazon seller universe. So it's a multi-tiered, multi-stepped story.
How did you identify, is it just a feel that like, oh, people want to know how Amazon makes money, and then I can lead them to ultimately what we're going for? But how do you identify that I guess let's call it the hook. How did you identify that?
I think we would need multiple hours to adequately address that. However, I knew that it would work given that we had one about how Google made their money. That was a very successful campaign for WordStream that had a $230 million exit to Gannett a few years before. So I knew that the pulse of the internet, this pulse, not this pulse. So I knew that the pulse of the internet was fresh on that and that it fit the bill for the more narrow market that they were looking for, but also the interest of the public's consciousness. I like to, as a mental model and construct, understand what do we think the public's consciousness is interested in that they don't know enough about, that we can also solve the problem in the same setting. That's what we did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Just going to take a second to digest that.
I said a lot of words.
Yeah. And they were very good words, properly put together in a way that makes sense.
That's why I couldn't just be in tech all day.
So if we're going to talk about now, you have this great campaign. What are some of the core elements that a brand needs to scale? They know that their product works. They know that they have a market, they got buyers. But how do they go about scaling it beyond what they're used to? Maybe moving into other markets or, making their audience even larger.
Brands are stuck in their own minds and in their four walls of safe incremental steps that will not get them to the quantum leap of the next iteration of their company. Too often, brands do not understand with perfect clarity that every company should be a media company, because people like to compete on dimensional grid that we have 50% better this and better lead time and lag this and percentages of that and quadrant this. They don't get it. If you're not part of the public's dialogue and consciousness, you've missed the game. Jeff Bezos famously said that your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. Any idiot can just pop off about what they have to say in their heavy-handed press releases and perfectly placed shiny things, little influencers in their hair and all that, but it's not interesting. So to be talked about, think about like Apple versus Microsoft, right? Apple shows like one little rounded corner and they don't even show you what it does. And then the commercial ends and they make $1 trillion, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
So people don't think about that enough. Famously, Red Bull got really good at this.
I love Red Bull. Not necessarily
but even
the
if
drink.
It's not great
brand.
For you. It's fine. I've done some work for them in the past. The point of differentiation, though, is...
But with the Jägermeister, it's very good. Anyway.
All right, we could have that after hours. So point of the matter is, how many lookalike drinks are like a Red Bull? Oodles of them. It's not even a number.
Oh, you're saying the energy drink.
Yeah, just energy drink market's flooded. Yeah. Everybody wants to compete.
Yeah.
But they're a brand. Why? Because they dialed into their market and they did wild stuff and had magazines and music tours and people jumping out of the end of space. Right? Look at Coca-Cola. Right? Think about polar bears.
Very cute.
Right? And penguins. Ever been to the Coca-Cola Museum? That thing is
unfortunately
legit.
Not. Yeah.
It is worth going to Atlanta just for that. Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta?
ATL, baby. Hot Atlanta. It's legendary.
One of those things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I don't
Careful
know
with your gang signs.
Yeah, did I just throw up a gang sign?
Don't get a Chinese tattoo that says I'm a dumb
idiot. I may have just thrown up a gang sign and I apologize.
Yeah. Just
I'm not affiliated with that.
Yeah, clearly. Well, are you? I don't know. We could unpack that later. We'll do that on the backside of this podcast. Needless to say, how in the world does a major sugar water drink that is commercial to consumers have a museum that people pay money to look at previous iterations of our brand?
It's all branding.
It is. Everybody has a story, and most people are not brave enough to tell it or honest. They're disillusioned. They lose the forest through the trees.
I'll tell you, what I think it is that there's a lot of, we're in a big major tech hub over here, right?
Yeah.
And when you're talking about this brand, they create widgets.
Right.
And it's like, okay, like we create widgets.
We create widgets and we don't need marketing.
Yeah. Or we
don't need marketing.
Exactly. Or we're a cybersecurity.
You need marketing.
Yeah. Or we're a cybersecurity company. We're B2B and we,
Yep.
And they're like, my product is a great product. So like, what do I need to like go overboard with marketing? I need to just do enough to just get myself and get the sale at the end of the day. And that's great. But you're like, no,
it's not how the world works
even
at all.
So how does a brand like that's less, if you think about something like Coca-Cola or Red Bull, there's like a physical experience with the drink.
Does not matter.
It doesn't matter.
Nope.
Doesn't matter.
Everything exists in your brain. Doesn't have to be physical.
So can you think of stories about like, let's say like a SaaS company that created like a cool brand and you're like, wow, they did it right. Like, is anything come to mind about like a SaaS company that created a really cool brand around it that people are like, wow, that's awesome.
Salesforce. All day. You're already thinking about all the characters and all the trails and all that stuff. And while you're thinking about it, they're building another iconic tower on both sides of the United States.
And another concert series that also is somehow a conference.
Major conference. Correct. It's a whole show. They changed the game. There aren't other CRM systems?
No, there are.
Lots of other ones.
Oh, it's true.
It's a good example.
Yeah.
Because they invested a lot of time and attention into their brand. I may have done a couple things behind the scenes on that.
So oftentimes, from a company perspective, branding is the scariest investment because there's very hard to see immediate direct ROI. If you have a specific marketing campaign and you're getting clicks and like, this is great, amazing, but investing into the brand, investing into, getting your name out there.
To be clear, though, I'm not a brand guy, and they're opposite ends of the spectrum. You need some level of brand to set the table before you start marketing.
Yeah.
Because you need to have some level of identity.
Yeah. It's super important. But like, let's say, people are doing video series, talking about different departments or different products or different whatever.
I'll throw one different at you.
Okay.
You ever hear of The Weeknd?
Meaning the human?
Yeah.
Who's a musician? Yeah.
Yep. Do you know what mystery marketing is?
I think you're about to tell me.
Yeah, but do you know what it is?
No.
Okay. So once upon a time, the guy who's The Weeknd, who's like the most popular guy on Spotify and has like 1 trillion listens or something absurd.
I think it's a gazillion.
Yeah.
But yeah.
A Google, if you will.
Googleplex.
Yeah, a Google. Spelled differently. But his kid said that different, but that's how Google started. Anyways, nobody knew who he was. And then he just started like uploading stuff on YouTube. So mystery marketing is really interesting, where it's almost like you could have a headless brand and it almost doesn't even matter. And it's just kind of like a ghost and they're more interested and you're intrigued. So I could play devil's advocate on what I've been saying, that you kind of have to have a brand. Sometimes you just have to have a movement. Sometimes you just have to get into that consciousness. And the brand doesn't matter as much. Like I was just talking with a friend about Snapchat the other day. Kind of irrelevant, but specifically some of the stuff that they did was more on the mystery side. So I remember in the States, they had this crazy idea where they had a vending machine of Snapchat spectacles. It's probably, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. And they would just drop off a machine somewhere, anywhere, not even in like a population center. It's crazy. And people would like line up for miles around and try to like spend money in a vending machine and get glasses.
But these are people who already knew about, like, how did people know it was
right.
there?
So to be fair, well, you just had to watch like The Secret, Follow the White Rabbit on the internet.
So there was this like,
think about like speakeasies and code words.
Dude,
and
you know what
this
this reminds me of? When I was about 17, 18, 19, something like that.
Yeah.
There was this book that came out that was like a puzzle mystery book. And what happens is that if you were able to solve the riddle, they had these gems and jewels that the guy spent millions and millions of dollars.
What book is this?
I'll try to find it for you. It was, I don't remember right now, but
sad, Brian, it's sad.
But it was basically what he said is I took 20, 30, 50, I don't remember, but jewels, like each one was like $50,000, $100,000 or more, nice. Yeah. I created these things, these trinkets, and I hid them. It could have been in a city. It could have been in a national park. It could have been whatever. Yeah. And each page of the book, you had to solve the riddle to figure out what it was, where it was potentially hidden. And then once you figure that in the book, you would have to get up off your tuchus and go there and you can actually find it.
There you go.
So he was this guy who became a successful business person, millions of dollars. And he's like, I love puzzles. I love games.
Sounds like Ready Player One.
A little bit. Yeah. But this is in the
physical
world. Yeah. So I'm like, it reminds me of that is like, it's that mystery. It's that they have to invest their time and effort into it.
Right. There's different tactics at it, but we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
It all harmonizes.
Yeah. So we were talking about a little bit about conferences before, and I know that you now, for years, you've been heavily involved in South by Southwest, and now you've taken kind of on your shoulders, starting from last year, and you're expanding it this year, the Innovate Summit.
Yes.
We offline have discussed
Sure have.
conferences, and you've been quite critical of what we would call the biggest conferences, the ones that everybody wants to go to, everyone wants to be a part of. They seem so amazing.
They don't. Everybody does not. People say one thing and do another. So you have to actually watch a person's actions. Just because people say they want to go there, it's because they're expected there. A lot of people go to conferences because they know other people are going to be there.
Yeah.
And they think that that's going to be a numbers game. That's not how to do it.
But as you're saying, is like, you go there, if you are a drop in the ocean, like, good luck creating any real meaningful connections there.
Ain't gonna happen. Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about the importance of networking, conferences, and ultimately what you're trying to kind of, I guess, re-envision. And you are, you have re-envisioned it, and you're creating this new world.
There's a lot of chapters on this one. Let's see. Let's start with influence. People don't understand how to be influential. So if you talk to people all day, what if you could be the best call that they're having of the day? What if you're making content on LinkedIn? What is the most interesting thing that you yourself would have wanted to see? People don't usually put enough thought in the intent of the dialogue in that conversation. And I know we talked about this before, people don't know how to lead positively with generosity. And it's almost everything wrong with the world, because without generosity, you can't have acts of kindness and reciprocation. People want to be good. People want to reciprocate. People want to be good people. They want to help others. Like, you don't want to trust mercenaries with your business. Come on. Yeah. Machiavelli's like, no, we don't need that. It's a good book, but it's not a good lifestyle. So I think the problem with conferences and the expectations that people have is that the conferences aren't doing their job. Hard stop. A conference says, I'm going to bring you 50, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people. And somehow you're going to make it because we have speed networking. So people don't know how to dialogue. They talk about the weather. Why? Sports ball. How about them Yanks? I mean,
let's not talk about that right now.
Right, exactly. Or you talk about politics and you're stepping on a landmine of conversation killers. It's silly. Have a real conversation. It's a human. About a man, Brian Kramer, famously said, there is no B2B or B2C, only H to H, human to human. So even the most powerful brands in the world, you don't want to talk to a logo. You want to talk to Dove. You want to talk to Brian. You want to talk to all you guys. Right? So the conference doesn't do a good enough job facilitating the art of conversation among the harmony of what should be the harmony of the conversation of the conference. And people don't know how to dialogue within it. And it falls onto them, and that's why people don't do well.
Okay, so if we're talking about, because I want to really go into this, because there is, look, you're creating a great conference, and we're going to go into that. But currently, there exists big conferences that people do go to, right? What would you say? What are some tips and strategies that you would have for a person to go? The goal is, like, let's say Chargeflow goes to a conference, right? Obviously, we want to make meaningful professional relationships that lead to good deals and good business on both sides.
Walk me through how you meet people.
So, I mean, I have yet to go to the conference, but that's coming up. But I know
We're
my
getting
team.
You on one right now.
Exactly. My team, what we've done is that we basically we'll create a booth, so there's kind of like a holding area. And
so
then
you have an anchor. Good.
Yep. So there's
what
an
else
anchor.
Do you have?
It's very nicely designed, all that stuff. And then we would create meetings beforehand, with brands that we wanted to connect with. And then there would be some, kind of backroom talk.
Sorry, I can't do that.
I think he fell asleep or worse.
Yeah. You're killing me, Smalls. Come on now.
So, they have these backroom type meetings that are short. And
everyone does this. So you do not stand out. So you're already losing before you've started.
Okay.
So I already told you what I'm going to tell you. It's okay. Come on, team. Let's up that game. Let's go.
We're about to do it. Go
All right.
big.
So I already said it. Every brand has to be what? Remember Red Bull jumping out of space?
Memorable?
Memorable. Every brand should be a media company.
Media company.
So every individual that represents the brand can also be a media company. Every one of your sales and marketing people that go to events can have their own personal brand. They could make LinkedIn content. They could make videos. They could do all sorts of different things. But people overly rely on the booth just because it's a nicer booth.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to outcompete nicer booth because somebody will always spend more money or be more creative. But a lot of times I've observed firsthand, people at booths are boring and are bored. Mm. Sometimes they'll sit down and not get up when people come. They won't try to get people to come over. You'll get people who are attractive, and they're so attractive that people are
like intimidated.
Intimidated, correct. It's called booth babes in the industry.
Maybe that's why they haven't had me go to conferences yet.
Maybe. I mean, I didn't call you a booth babe. What do you got in there again?
You can talk about that later.
Fine. Cheers. So,
Irish coffee, right?
Like we do. They'll never know. I'm just naturally this calibrated. I don't know about you, buddy.
You definitely are.
Booth babes are terrible because they're intimidating and they don't know your product. Mm. People don't understand that you need to make a relationship with the people that you're talking to. You should make an indelible mark in a positive fashion with the people that you're meeting, not just because you have a booth and a product.
Okay, Brian. So what I want you to do now is Brian Wallace is going into a large conference, mm-hmm. right? I've seen you go in with your gimbal and your phone and interview people, yep. But what is your strategy going in? And then when you're there, what do you do?
Like, why am I live streaming?
Live streaming, or just I want to understand, like when you're going into these conferences, like you're thought out. You're experienced, you're thought out. When you go in, you're not just like, we just figure it out. Like I feel like a lot of it is, I'm sure there's testing.
I'm an animal. That's right.
But you know what you're doing when you're going in.
Yes.
What does that look like?
I'm giving a talk about this in 2 weeks, and it is called How to Be the Most Interesting Person in the Room. Because people do not understand the positive framing of the word influence. It has been scorched earth by the influencers that go to jail for taking away everybody's retirement savings and having the fire festival and all these con artists and charlatans that talk a good game and then run off with the kitty.
Yeah.
However, the positive value of influence, the influence that you can wield for a positive, mutually beneficial world that you win and they win, and you make great things together, is not talked about enough. Everybody talks about networking, and that's just for aggressive type A salespeople, and it's not. It's something that people have the natural ability, but also can have a lot of learned, trained skills to do so. So again, think about some of the constructs we've already talked about. You are a brand. The brand that you represent is a brand. How do you be that most interesting person in the room? Skip the small talk, get to know the person, develop a relationship, go deep with fewer people that they will want to hang out with you anytime you're in town.
But you're going into...
And how does business not come out of that?
So you go into the conference, right? And let's say you don't know anybody, because sometimes...
That doesn't actually happen as much as you might think, but we can suspend that. No, but wait,
know people,
but hold on.
I'm saying
wait.
Fresh to the game.
No, but hold on. So I think part of the trick is a bunch of people already know who you are. It changes the power dynamic in the room. That doesn't mean I'm an egomaniac, prima donna, or anything like that. But it's interesting. When people come to you, social psychology will dictate that if there's you, and I'm not picking on you, but in the construct here, in our mind's eye, if we're in a room, and there's nobody talking to you and like a group of 20 people around me, I am therefore interesting. For no reason. Like you could be on a street corner and you look up, 5 other people will look up too. Why? Because that's how humans are. We're hardwired for survival, which manifests into idiocy. So to actually be known before you walk in the room is incredibly powerful, and people could do that too. And that's part of why I live stream, because what people aren't seeing is that I am cross-pollinating all of the people who are living vicariously and watching the world of whatever I'm doing through Brian's eyes. And I'm meeting the people who are there, and they are dialoguing with each other. So I've cemented my brand, my personal brand, my business brand, and making content, and I'm furthering all of that. And I'm also lifting up the people that I'm meeting. Sometimes people don't get all of that because there's a lot of stuff happening in the background.
No, because sometimes people view it, and I've seen this often, and sometimes I've felt it, is that, you know, I'm just a regular guy.
So
like, why should anybody be interested in my life, in my thing?
And that is a problem between you and the mirror when you wake up in the morning. That is in your head, that you are telling yourself and dooming the rest of your day that you're not interesting. Why can't you be interesting? Like, what's the competition? Nothing. Here's some swag at a booth, and let's have a meeting in some glass square in the back. Everybody's doing that.
Yeah.
Salesforce didn't play that game. Apple didn't play that game. Everybody that's $1 trillion market cap didn't do that. Everybody has a cult of personality. Sometimes it's the leader. Some people make their own miracles. You don't need permission for this.
How do you, I guess, what's your inner dialogue when you put yourself out there? Mm-hmm. You know, is this, I'm trying to make an impact. I'm trying to build my own brand because I want recognition. I don't mean to be, I know you, so that's not necessarily it.
I'm not an ego guy. I like to downplay my ego and be understated.
And yet you go into a room and it's like a whirlwind at times.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
So how do you justify that to yourself?
How do I justify what?
When you go into the room, like, for example, some of the reasons, you know, I go in there and we've all seen people like this. Mm-hmm. There are people who walk into a room and, like I said, it's like a whirlwind. Like, they're just like here. They're the life of the party. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, and oftentimes I think that this happens with people who are, because I am a very introverted person. I feel like I'm a very introverted person, but I'm also a performer. Mm-hmm. So, like, I have both, but I keep
your extroversion, but only in a narrow band of stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I constantly say, like, I guess to myself, like, what do I need to share this? What do I need to share that? You know? And so I guess I look for a more focused area. Like, we have this podcast and all that stuff. That's great. But then let's say it comes to building your brand, a lot of people, what I've seen is, this actually, I look through my statistics on LinkedIn, the posts that get the most response, most whatever engagement. I noticed that the ones that had the biggest draw, impact, whatever, were the ones that about my personal life. Mm. The handful of times that I talk about my personal life on LinkedIn, they got the biggest draw, the most likes, the most shares, the most
with
whatever.
All due respect, you're looking at the wrong things.
Mm. Okay.
One day when I was feeling a little feisty before coffee, I illustrated this with an iceberg meme. And I talked about all the dumb things that people do at the top of the iceberg. But I want paying clients and people that I want to hang out with forever, that are underneath the surface. So, and I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but I think it is important and instructive that we examine this, because I think it's what people don't understand. If you're looking at how many impressions your video got, or how many likes it got, how many comments, you're looking at the wrong thing, because that's not why we're there. Are we there to entertain people? We'd be on like YouTube or TikTok, right? It's LinkedIn, where you're trying to like make connections and like run some biz. So I love helping people free themselves from the shackles within their own mind. And I can do that at a conference. And when are they not going to be there for me? Right? Mm-hmm. So I have a whole book that hasn't come out yet that I'm still kind of working on. And I have an idea that there is an influence metric. Again, not influencer. I actually like the word renown, because influence is kind of ruined.
Is that a book? That's a book.
Yeah. What?
There's a book called Influence, I believe.
Yeah, of course. There's probably 100 books. That's why we got to call it Renown, except I'm not a 17th century painter, but I digress. So here's the thing.
Not yet.
Not yet, but
if you work hard enough.
Time travel notwithstanding, we can make some miracles, but I don't know about that one.
Elon Musk is going to crack that code too.
We'll
anyway.
talk about Elon later. Right. Listen, so importantly, instead of how many likes, if I sent a DM to somebody on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, whatever, would the person see it and like literally look at it, respond within 2 minutes in a positive way? And if you haven't made that impression on somebody's mind, have you really won them over? To go deeper with fewer people at these kinds of things, and everything in your life will be better. Mindy that's a little too grand. Vote for me, and all your dreams will come true. Yeah. Definitely was channeling Napoleon.
Minimally, your professional life will improve.
I know. I was giving us some comedy.
But no, that's a vastly different perspective than what seems to be the norm, which is I need to make as many, because you go to a conference, I got to make as many shallow connections as possible, and then try to cultivate it later when I'm no longer actually there.
And this is where our conference is intentionally different. Instead of going to a zoo carnival of 10,000 people that you might meet a couple dozen badly and then follow up with them a month later, which you might not even do. Mm-hmm. What if you could meet 100% of the conference well? And what if it was facilitated by people that are part of the conference, that know everybody in the room, and they say, oh, Dove, you work at Chargeflow, you want this, this, and this. Instead of you politely walking around with coffee and water and beer and snacks and just enduring a conversation that you're not even interested in, where you're just boring yourself. And it's not a love connection, shall we say. Okay?
Yep.
What if that connection conductor, social media butterfly, LinkedIn, EQ quant, could look at you and say, tell me who you are, what you're about, what you're looking for. This person is for you. So instead of you wasting half a day
matchmakers
chasing, instead of spending half a day chasing around your ICP, your ideal customer profile, what if you could reallocate the time that would otherwise be polite and useless, and then you could have a deeper multi-tiered conversation with the same person that, and we just had this in May, people are already doing business. So instead of everybody having these like, might as well be AI robots just saying, I went to the conference and it was really great and I had such a great time. Thanks, conference. Ding. Right? Like, I feel like I want to die watching these things. It's pathetic. So this cringe bait garbage ain't it. And everybody does that. So what if you could actually meet everybody well, and you could meet the ideal people within the room and be devastatingly effective? And that's how business is done. People will only do business unless your plumbing blows up overnight and you bring the emergency plumber. We're not going to be so.
We don't have to go too deep into that.
Yeah, we do. They have to go too deep into that. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring back.
It's okay.
Past trauma.
It's okay. It all worked out.
People love to do business with those that they know, like, and trust. That's it. My mind was just blown. I mean, it continuously is blown with you. But the biggest one is that, and I think about what you do, and there's a few other people who I know who are similar to this, which is I am connected with so many people, and I know so many people in a real way. Yep. That I know what their interests are, what they like. I mean, you do this constantly with me. You're constantly being like, Dove, like, I think this is a great person that you should meet with. Right. Talk to them. I think you guys would hit it off. Mm-hmm. It's because you know what I'm good at and what I'm looking for, and the same thing. Right. And you're right. Like, if I'm thinking, like, even at conferences, if there were in general, like, these kind of like matchmakers who are like, oh, I know exactly these types of things. Because oftentimes you have to kind of do it by yourself. Right. Or they just have like this dumb hour where we have speed networking, speed dating stuff. So you've heard of the Ritz-Carlton. They make fancy hotels. Mm-hmm. They basically run the hospitality game. Mm-hmm. So much so that they invented the 5-Star Diamond Hospitality Training Institute. What's interesting about that is when Apple decided to go into retail, instead of just selling everything online, they went to hospitality. school instead of learning how to do crappy retail and becoming irrelevant. Back in the day when Apple first cut that ribbon and you walked in, it was amazing. Here's what happens. For those of you who've never been to the Apple store in the good old days, it's worth saying, it's worth unpacking this. So back in the day, you would be at the front door and there'd be like a military trained guy staring at you line of sight. That was his job, to kind of tell you to come over. So you walk on over and immediately you'd have your problem taken care of. I want some new AirPods, which I was about to pull out of my pocket, but they're over there. But I digress. I do it.
Here we go.
Not a product placement. There we go. Right. So you're like, I want some AirPods. And then some other guy would like pirouette out of a glass door and be like, here it is, sir. Right. Yep. And then you'd be happy to shell out hundreds of dollars and you wouldn't have to go and waste time at the counter. You would just have some, iPad or something. You'd pay it. You'd tap your phone and you're out the door in like less than 2 minutes, a little lighter on cash and smiling with your little status icon bag. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
It was legendary.
Yeah.
Because they understood hospitality. And the $1 trillion conference industry does not, or forgot. And it's a numbers game.
That's so true. It's kind of like you're this amorphous blob floating through. Hi, here's your tag. See you later. Go in.
Yep. Here's your badge.
And then you're just like, whoa.
Here's your badge.
What's going on?
Like cattle.
Yeah.
It's not mean. What?
Oh, man.
Now, conferences have had a tough time. They were getting greedy and big before the pandemic. Then the pandemic utterly gutted them. And a lot of them did not emerge again. Mm-hmm. We tried to do virtual events, but nobody wants to stare at 100 little boxes on Zoom and we learned how to make a margarita. Please, let's get back out there. Come on. World doesn't need that. But it got weird. Like we forgot how to interact. People lost the art of conversation. We were always staring at screens and we were looking at the screen and looking at the dot and we didn't know what to do. And we can't handle looking at ourselves. And it's like being on a podcast all day and you can't maintain that energy.
Yeah.
Right? Unless you're media trained or naturally nuts.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tough one. So I feel like the conference industry is having a new renaissance where people are being particular and selective because during the pandemic, they had to make do. They still had to meet quota.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we got more selective. And some conferences went belly up. Other conferences have been heavily into mergers and acquisitions. And sometimes when the acquisitioner buys a conference and they water down the soup, people don't want to go anymore. Yeah.
Well, all right. So what if a person is, they're not overly, maybe that's just the problem. They don't necessarily want to build their brand so much. They kind of just want to go. They want to do their job. They want to come home. Some people don't want to actively build their brand on LinkedIn or on social.
Why? Why don't they? What do they do? Let's have a thought experiment. Invent a human, please.
Let's say that they're, I'll just use it. They're part of the sales team. Sure. And they're like, listen, my job is to make the sale. I have, meetings that are booked for me, or sometimes I have to dig up my own, my own business.
Right.
I just want to go. I want to have the conversation. I want to close the deal. I want them to be happy. I want to be happy. And that's it. I don't want to spend time,
and I'd be
creating
like,
content.
Hello, McFly. Maybe you didn't hear everything I've been saying for the last 45 minutes.
You're saying get over yourself.
Get over yourself.
This is part of your job now.
Yeah, it's literally your job. Your job is to bring in sales. You think leads are going to magically work themselves? Why not just send an AI robot instead?
Working on it, actually.
Yeah. Really? I'll bring the baseball bat.
Nice.
Boston Dynamics, shout out. That's right. So, it doesn't necessarily work that way. Now, some people are exceptional at sales and they could just do it, but people want a more helpful guide on what they're being sold. And they want to be their own person. You're not going to tell me what to do. It's got to be my idea. But that's essentially what marketing, not advertising, is. Mm-hmm. To take my idea, put the seed of it in your brain, walk away, have it germinate, and when you've sprouted some corn and wheat and whatever, you come to me with your strong opinion that's weakly held.
So also, I think that the thing is that when brands go to these conferences, they're expecting, once again, immediate ROI. You go to the conference, you talk to the person, you find their problem.
I've been to conferences that a decade later we're still doing biz with people that we met.
But when did that biz start? Did that biz start right away?
Sometimes
or
not.
Sometimes it.
Now, to be fair, it depends on the sales cycle of the individual product or service. So I'm not going to broad strokes that.
Yeah.
But anybody who's like just breathing down your neck and saying, show me as many leads as possible. No, that's the wrong metric.
Because think about it. If you're a CFO and you're looking at all the financial activities that you have going on for your company.
If you're a CFO, you should be a long-term strategist, or you're a bad CFO, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a CFO and you're like, if you don't produce money 30 days after this conference, then you're stupidly spending money. You know that there should be a rate of return. So let's say you should get a 10x return on going to a conference.
Yeah.
Right? Spend 100, get $1 million. Okay.
Sounds good.
Great. Who's not going to sign off on that? But you have to, it's your job as the salespeople to explain to the CFO, you're going to just snap your fingers.
The $1 million is not going to be in 30 days. It could be in 365 days.
Correct. But it's still coming.
Yeah.
And how else do they want you to do acquisition? Right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people are making their own decisions out there. But if you're meeting people in person, it's magical. Your win rate is so strong.
Dude, it's always been my go-to. I had like a short failed startup of my own when I was venturing into the tech world. Okay. And I went to a conference in London, right? And why did I go there? Because some of the companies that I wanted to meet with.
Tuesday,
yes.
Tuesday,
Governor.
CHEW.
We work with a lot of.
Literally is Tuesday. You just check your watch to see if it's Tuesday.
It literally says, I'm not lying.
It says Tuesday.
I have one of those new watches that show the date.
That says it in British.
It says in British. Yeah, chew with a CH.
Chew.
So anyway, so I went to London because there was a bunch of brands that I saw were presenting whatever. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to meet these brands. They're presenting there. Huh? After they come off stage, I'm going to accost them, but just very gently and say, hey, listen, I love what you said. XYZ, it actually worked. XYZ.
You can't gently accost somebody. That's what I was taking issue with.
You don't know me well enough yet. It was a gentle accosting. So,
did you take a kidney?
I took their number and their information.
Close enough.
So we exchanged information. And I said, I'm doing this. Oh, that's cool. But I'm like, I don't want to waste your time right now. I know you got 1,000 things. Is it okay if I email you, you follow up? Yeah, sure. Let's talk, whatever. That worked 90% of the time. It was really great. Made a connection. Here was the magic. I'm there. And at the time we built out this app, we were building like a 3D virtual dressing room thing. And we had like one of the builds. And it had an AR component. So if I held up my phone, I could look through the phone and I see standing like on the table.
That's augmented reality to us civilians.
Yes, which I think they gave up on that. Not really. But
not even close.
I know.
Oh,
we were 10 years too early.
Yeah. Sure.
Which literally, I think maybe we'll be 15 years too early.
We're almost starting. Yeah.
Okay. So I was doing that company like 8 years ago.
Yep.
So anyway, we had this and I'm looking through it. And then these two women who are across from me, maybe about 10 feet away, start looking very uncomfortable. And she says, excuse me, are you taking our picture? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. No, I actually have an app and I'm just looking at the AR. And she's like, wait, what? Tell me, what is this? I'm like, it's 3D virtual dressing room, whatever. Yeah. She's like, can you tell me more about it?
Right.
We have a conversation. Right. Turns out that she's the head of the innovation center of Accenture, which is one of the largest, consulting firms in the entire world. And she's like, this seems really interesting. She's like, I want to give you my information. Let's get in touch. It was in Milan. They had me fly out to Milan and eventually we created this kind of partnership. Mm-hmm. But you're talking about like the magic and really cool things that happen when you're in person. Right. I went there not for Accenture was sponsoring the whole thing, but I had nothing to do with it. What would it is not my market, nothing. And it turned out that ended up having the magical moment.
But here's the thing. Yeah. Conferences like to pretend that they create the serendipity that you're describing, and it doesn't. Something that we notably are doing. Okay, close your eyes for a minute. So, and we're not going to get ready to open them again. Okay. Good.
This is a podcast, so you can't.
Is. I know, but we're just.
If you're listening.
My wife says that I have a really good assuring voice and people like the way that I sound, which is not the weirdest thing that people could say to you on the internet, but I'm like, I should do podcasts.
I like how you sound.
Yeah, thank you. It works. Good podcasting voice.
That's why I like talking to you.
It sounds like people are saying I'm ugly, but that's not what it means. It's not a voice for radio. That's different.
A face for radio. Yeah.
Great, not a face for radio. Fair. So imagine in our mind's eye, there's a Rubik's Cube. For those of you who are too young to remember that, please just Google it and don't insult me and make me feel older. So Rubik's Cube. Imagine that you could explode and deconstruct a Rubik's Cube. And it's just sitting there in a million pieces like Willy Wonka, Mike TV.
My son just did that the other day. Yeah.
Cool. Hopefully you cleaned it up. Or you probably did. In any case. So I know how to structure abstract chaos to make it understandable for humans, because that's hard to do. You have to be good at a lot of different things and put them together. So imagine what was cool about our event, and will be cool again, is that we took cool, innovative people and things and systems and ecosystems and brought them together. So instead of everybody talking about the weather and sports ball and useless meanderings, we had one after another great speech, fireside chat, panel, keynote, whatever, about different topics. So people would see themselves in that deconstructed Rubik's Cube, and people couldn't wait to talk to that person and have that dialogue. And it bred more culture of innovation in what to talk about with people, because it was like parallel play that for the first time, you actually didn't want to leave watching the stage. Because usually people are like, I have to endure this.
Snooze fest.
Correct, but it wasn't. There is a harmonic resonance of the overall programming that people don't understand. They just go for big names, whatever that means. And big names often have giant egos, show up late, leave immediately after they're on stage. Every one of these guys hung out for the whole event. And instead of it being talking heads at the front, imagine that there's the same harmony and cohesion in everybody that's there. So if you remember your augmented reality glasses or your app, whatever. So imagine we have AR goggles, and over everybody's head at the conference, it shows your LinkedIn connection. Not how many connections, but what your distance is. Everybody at that event is your first or second level connection. So no third level cold DM spammers need not apply. So there's a level of implicit trust and vouch that's there because you're supposed to be there. So all those things together make a really cool Rubik's Cube that people don't imagine that they're ever supposed to get at a conference.
Wow. All right. Yeah.
You're already coming.
What was that?
You're already coming.
He's like, you were coming no matter what.
I mean, chloroform or free will.
Yeah. Whatever works.
Yeah, it's fine.
Sounds great to me. All right, Brian, I know we have just another minute or two.
Yes, sir.
I want to know what makes you tick from the perspective of inspiration. Like, what would you consider what made you you? Because you're a person who likes connecting. You go deeper, but is it a natural thing? Is it something that you've learned?
A little bit of everything. So I've always been curious. First half of my life, I was probably more introverted, but I'm like, I think I need to be a little more extroverted to get out there. And I've had some major traumatic life events that I think if you can slay your demons, overcome ridiculous life events, you can do anything. And all this other stuff is easy. I'm not suggesting to put yourself through trauma, but if you can get on the other end of impossible, you really can.
How do you,
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because we've spoken about this.
It's literally
everybody
survival.
On their level has gone through something.
Literally survival. Yeah.
It was just, I need to get through, because certain people are stuck. I'll put it to you this way. Certain people are stuck on the past traumatic event that prevents them from moving forward. I just saw, and it made me cry. I happen
to be a very intense person.
Well, I just want to tell you this one point. I just saw a clip the other day, made me cry, was a 94-year-old Holocaust survivor who was speaking to a group of October 7th survivors and their families and their friends and former hostages. And he said, I'm here to tell you and to give you hope, because I've been there, and I want to tell you that there's hope on the other side of this. Right. And the first thought that I had is like, maybe a reason that the Lord brings us through difficult times isn't only for ourselves, but it's also to prove to other people when they look at us, you know what? If they could get through it, I can get through it.
Correct.
But how do you break yourself out of looking in the rearview mirror and looking forward?
People are stuck between 0 and 1 a lot. There's a great video that I recommend to people that are stuck. If I'm not there to, perform brain surgery on them while we're having a podcast or
digital
having
brain
coffee
surgery.
Digital brain surgery. I don't know.
You don't know that's our next podcast.
You didn't check my pockets. I don't know. Who knows?
That's our next podcast.
Who knows with this guy? So there's a great internet guy from ye old internet days by the name of Ze Frank. That's Zefrank. He was very popular, probably maybe at the beginning of YouTube or before YouTube. A lot of people knew him from the evolution of dance and super old school internet. And then he kind of went out of fashion for a while and he got quiet and he just went away. And then one day he just randomly came back with a YouTube video and it's called A Convocation for Beginnings. It's like 2.5 minutes long. And I tell people to watch that. I don't want to ruin the whole video for everybody listening. Maybe we could link to it in the show notes or whatnot. But he does such a poetic job of explaining how to get out of that state. And different things motivate different people, right? I think that a lot of motivation is popcorn BS, and you can get addicted to motivation. You watch an inspirational speech and you go back to sleep on the couch. So sometimes the accountability needs to come from within, and sometimes you need to find some accountability within others, within your close friends.
And what motivates you to keep striving for the next level?
I live every day as if it were my last because I am ridiculously intense. Much more than people would care to know on this podcast or else.
That's amazing. All right, here we go. Last one.
Yeah.
What's the greatest piece of advice that you've ever been given?
I mean, I just said like what I said there. There's an interesting movie called Gattaca.
Heard of it.
It's Huxley's Brave New World.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can't ruin the whole construct, but really interestingly, like it's these two brothers that have always been competitive since childhood. And then they meet later in life at a very different age and stage. And they always used to do a thing when they were kids that they would go and they swim and swim and swim, and who could ever go furthest away from shore would win. So there's the so-called weak brother who would always win against the strong brother. David and Goliath much? Everybody's heard this story over and over since time immemorial. And finally, when they're adults, they try it again. And the big brother who's strong is getting beaten again and almost drowns. And he's like, how do you do it? And he says, I never save anything for the way back. And I told you, I'm an intense person. Like, I think that if you want to actually step up and try to change anything in the world, if you don't have a drive in you, you're not going to succeed. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're running a brand, if you're a salesperson, if you lack the internal motivation to really push forward, especially when things are hard, you're going to fail.
Wow. A ridiculous amount to unpack for this podcast.
Yeah. Copay in the mail.
Exactly. I owe you a lot. So Brian, thank you so much. Really
Pleasure.
Appreciate your time. Where can the audience find you?
Well, there's too many people on the internet named Brian Wallace. So typically I go on most social handles as Now Sourcing, the name of my company. When I'm on social, it's usually on LinkedIn. And feel free to check out the summit, which is going to be the 3rd week of May, if you go to theinnovatesummit.com.
Amazing. Okay, thank you to our audience for listening. We look forward to bringing you great stories and practical advice about how to grow your D2C brand. Please follow, like, and subscribe to the Grow with the Flow podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and feel free to reach out to Chargeflow at chargeflow.io for all your chargeback needs. Until next time, keep flowing.